Hello, and a warm welcome to our Christmas Remembrance evening. My name is Lynn, and I'm one of the funeral arrangers at East of England Co-op Funeral Services, and I'll be your host for this evening's event. For many years now, we have run remembrance events and carol concerts to help offer those who have lost someone a place to come together and remember those no longer with us. Whilst we aren't together in person, we hope that it will bring you some comfort and guidance this Christmas. Tonight we're broadcasting to you from our beautiful Wimpole Road Service Chapel in Colchester. What's great about this venue is it provides a light and welcoming setting for families to host a funeral service and to say goodbye to their loved ones. I'm joined tonight by my colleague Georgia Waters from our funeral services team and Charlie Green from Suffolk Mind. This year we will be featuring more music than ever before with musical performances from the Chorus Iceni and our very own funeral arranger Andrea and her bandmate Lee, who are part of a group called Shades of Grey. We hope that this can lift your spirits during a difficult time of year. Experiencing a bereavement can be a challenging time, and it can be hard to know what to do and where to turn to, as there's no set way. So tonight we will be answering your pre-submitted questions, giving guidance on how to cope, and talking about the support that is available in your area. We also have a live chat where one of our colleagues will be available throughout the event to offer guidance and signpost you to more support around bereavement. So if you would like to get involved or did not get a chance to submit a question beforehand, simply sign in with your Google account. Many of you shared the name of someone special you'd like to remember when registering for tonight's event, and we'll be showing those names throughout this evening's musical performances and during a moment of reflection towards the end of tonight's event. This moment of reflection is where we will dedicate some candles to remember those no longer with us. So many thanks again for giving us your time this evening. I'm now pleased to introduce our first musical performance from Chorus Iceni this evening. Here they are performing their version of White Christmas.
Ding, the Christmas bells are ringing. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know, where the treetops glisten and children listen to hear sleigh bells in the snow, the sleigh bells in the snow. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, with every Christmas card I write. May your days be merry and bright, so bright, and may all your Christmases see while the bells are ringing. May your days be merry and bright, merry and bright, and may all your Christmases be white. May all your Christmases be white.
Thank you to all the members of Chorus Iceni for that beautiful rendition of White Christmas. What an excellent performance to start our evening. Now I'm delighted to introduce Charlie Green, Deputy Head of Education and Training from Suffolk Mind. Charlie, would you be able to give us a bit of an introduction to what Suffolk Mind does throughout the region and what your role is there? I'm sure you must encounter several people much like members of our audience tonight who may have experienced a loss and turned to Suffolk Mind for help in their time of need.
Yeah, so Suffolk Mind is one of the local Mind offices. There's about 124. So I happen to be in Suffolk, but of course you have people across Norfolk and Essex, and there'll be many local Mind offices around. I'm the Deputy Head of Education and Training, so the area I particularly work in is really helping people to get awareness about what mental health is, how to talk about and take care of our mental health, which is essentially our brain and our emotions. And of course, although grief is not a mental health issue, it can mirror that, and we can feel quite a few of the same things and have some of the same symptoms when we have lost a loved one and we are grieving. So I'm really pleased to come here tonight and maybe share some ideas that could be of comfort or maybe even practical things people could do.
Thank you. It's good to have you here with us. I know that as we share together, we benefit from each other's knowledge, and it's really good to be able to share that this evening.
Thanks.
Thank you. And Georgia, thank you so much for joining us. Could you give us a bit of a summary of what you do as a funeral arranger with the East of England Co-op?
Yeah, so working as a funeral arranger, we support families who have lost their loved ones in ensuring we can give them the best send-off to remember their loved one, and working with them after the funeral as well to offer them support and guidance.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you. We now move to answer your pre-submitted questions. If you have any more questions that you didn't get a chance to submit tonight, please use our live chat. We might not get a chance to answer everything, but you will receive an email after this event where we will cover any questions we were unable to get to tonight. So our first question comes from someone who lost their young one at a very young age, just a few weeks, and asking how they can cope with that loss at particularly this time of year, and perhaps how they can create ways of remembering their loved one and marking their loved one's life. Charlie, I'm going to ask you, first of all, your thoughts on this question.
I think just want to acknowledge what a tragedy for the young child themselves and for the family and friends around. I'm sure the ripples of grief run very wide. I think it there's two parts to it really. There's the loss, the love and loss of that child. And then there's also all of those dreams and expectations and hopes for the future that they won't get to live with them. I think it's really important to find some way to keep their memory alive and have somewhere to channel that love. What do we do with that love that we have? Because that person isn't there in front of us anymore. And I know Georgia's got some ideas, and maybe we can think a few things together of what someone might do to remember.
So Georgia, do you have things that people you know have shared, that memories, how they mark a memory in that way?
So maybe creating a memory box of little pieces of some, perhaps maybe a hand and a footprint, and also maybe a comforter like their blanket or a favourite teddy bear. Just little things, maybe their favourite book as well, to help perhaps keep that memory alive, and talking about them lots as well, because you've still lost somebody, but somebody you love.
Yeah.
There's something for siblings and other families, maybe children who haven't yet been born, or maybe there's siblings and cousins around. If you are, as the adults, doing that, you're giving permission for those other children to give voice to that member of the family who isn't there in front of them, but they're part of everybody's hearts and memories, and that can sometimes make that easier for the other children who are around or yet to be born.
So it's a case of incorporating that memory and that person who's been part of your life, however short, however long, so that they are part of your traditions in a way, and not simply left out of that, either in your heart and your memory or in the whole family grouping, as it were.
Giving their life meaning. I'm thinking of one family I worked with who they had imagined the things that they would have liked to have done with their child, and so they still did that. And they took the memory of them to whether it was a beach or a wood or a river or whatever it was they wanted. And they had those kind of intentional activities that they did with this young person in mind. And they took great comfort in that. It was a kind of a ritual they did as a family, as a gathering. And it's anything that feels right, depending on who you and your family are, that can allow that person to live on in those stories. And I think that's important. if you're part of the wider community, it's also give yourself permission to speak to that family, and don't be scared of that conversation. I think everybody is going to feel the enormity of that story, but don't be scared to speak to them and acknowledge that grief and that loss, and allow that family to speak openly if that's what they want.
So kind of acknowledging that, because even though, however short a life is, that life was of value and is worth remembering and worth marking in some way. And the tradition is personal for each.
Yeah.
How you decide to do that. It can be as simple as planting a flower and watching it grow in their memory, or it can be creating a place that you go to that marks that memory in a particular event or special way each year. And how much you do that tradition, or how far you take it, is up to you. But it's valued and it's a valid thing to do. So thank you both for helping with that question.
So this next question is from someone who was with their partner for 54 years, and they are questioning, what do we do? How do I get back to normal? And people around them having an expectation that they get back to what they call normal. What advice or ideas could we give?
So 54 years is a long time to be together, and that in itself is something which is to be celebrated. And but also, I think the expectation of getting back to normal, it's that what is normal. I think in 54 years, we could all agree that there will have been many normals in those 54 years. I like looking at old photos of a town where I lived. And when you look at the comparison, then and now, they're just not the same. And without ever realising it, life has held so many changes. Now, in 54 years of marriage, those changes will have been experienced together sometimes, but sometimes not, because we do function as individuals, even within a relationship. So I think it's accepting that there is no such thing as normal, and then discovering what life has to bring for you. There is a life to be lived for yourself as well as within a couple. Perhaps for those who've lived 54 years together, the tradition was you did everything together, wasn't it? Or am I even assuming that? But nowadays, there seems to be much more individuality for people within a marriage. But I shouldn't assume anything. Finding your new normal, finding something that interests you, something that can be experienced in a different way, but still celebrating the memory of who you've shared your life with. And time will allow that to happen. Taking time for yourself, I think, is a very valid thing. I don't know if either of you would like to add to that. But.
Yeah, I feel that once you've lost somebody after such a long time, it's like you say, it's developing that new normal, and like say, what is normal? And perhaps in your own time, when you're ready to maybe perhaps do the things that you once did with that person that you've lost, and maybe with somebody new, perhaps a family member or a friend that you both had, and perhaps maybe a new adventure, doing something new, maybe a social club, meeting new people who may have perhaps been in the same position as you and lost somebody as well.
Yeah.
I think most people who want us to get back to normal is because your grief is uncomfortable for me. And if you could just move on, I would feel less uncomfortable having this conversation. And the uncomfortableness is not because I don't care, but I'm worried I'm going to upset you or hurt you or say the wrong thing. So there's something about society not rushing that process and allowing each of us to grieve at the speed we need to. And we'll probably go in and out of strong feelings, won't we? And how do we then do that better? How do we do it differently? How do we allow people to not go through an expected process and come back to your normal way of being? 54 years, I'm just thinking of all of the things that you would have experienced together and the things that you relied on each other for, and how understood, hopefully, you would have been by each other. And all of that has to be adjusted. And that takes time. It took 54 years to create. It's going to take a significant amount of time to adjust to being an individual after that. So I think the encouragement is for us as a society, relax, allow people to grieve, tolerate that it can feel a bit uncomfortable to see people grieving, and give them space to talk and be honest about how they are. It's what I would like to see more in society.
Yeah. Another question we've been asked is, what can I say to someone who's lost a loved one, particularly at Christmas?
I think it's natural that we don't want to upset anybody. And I think we worry a lot, we might say the wrong thing, particularly at a time of year like this. And I would say that if someone is grieving, I'm sure they would rather you said something than nothing. So even saying, this must be a really difficult time of year, I really don't know what to say to you to make anything feel better, but I want you to know I'm thinking about you. I'd like to hang out with you. How would you like to do that? I mean, it might be that we distract ourselves completely, or maybe we go down memory lane and talk things through, but just say you don't know, but just say something and get past that. I might make it worse, because I think we all know that if I'm grieving, you asking me about my grief doesn't bring it upon me. It might stir some emotions, but that is okay. But the fact that you've asked me and you've acknowledged me and you've spoken about my loved one, I think I'd find incredibly comforting, and we hear that a lot. And so it's good to remember you don't need to fix it. Like if I come and ask you how you are and you're grieving, it's not my job to fix your grief. Your grief is your process. It's my job to be a good friend or a good family member or a good colleague or good neighbour.
So really just be the person you always are with that person, and just share normally and ask about their day, ask about their plans, what they're doing, and just open up the conversation for them to be able to talk to you. It's often a way in, isn't it, into conversation. I don't know, Georgia, if you think the same.
I do. I agree with both of you. It's that you're still acknowledging that person, and like you say, it's you're not going to fix their grief. It's just about ensuring that that person knows that they are still in your thoughts. And like you say, if there's anything that you can do to perhaps distract them, take them, go out for the day, or, spend the day at home going through a photo memory book. I know, myself losing my granddad, I know my favourite thing to do is to sit and go through a memory book of all my memories I had of him and share them with, my friends and my family, to still acknowledge that person with everybody around you. Because like you say, it's not going to fix it, but it just makes it a little bit easier that, people are there to support you.
I think some really specific things would be, so there's a national workshop that's run by hospices in different areas of the country, and it's called Compassionate Conversations. So I'd really highly recommend people signing up. It's a free workshop to attend. And one of the bits of advice that they gave, which I took away, was if I was to phone you and say, how are you, and you're grieving, that's a really big question to try to answer. And it's unlikely you would find the words. But I could say to you, how are you this morning? How's your day going so far? How did that thing go last night? Make it very time-bound, which gives you much more of a chance to be able to find words for how you are. I thought that was really practical and helpful advice.
I love that phrase, compassionate conversations. And the courage to have compassionate conversations.
Yeah, and I was with a father who's a year after his daughter had died. He said that people have stopped asking me, as one of my best friends we sadly lost when I was about 26, and he said they've stopped remembering her. And I said, that isn't what I believe to be true. So I went and asked a lot of people in the social group, and they said, we just don't want to upset him when we see him. So I fed back, he really wants you to ask. He really wants you to tell tales. She was a very mischievous person, and tell him stories that would make him laugh about his daughter, who was really energetic and vivacious. And he now, 26 years later, he still has that experience because he told his community, please bring me stories, ask me, I want her to live on. And that, I think, was really important. Now, he might not have had that communicated, and he might have been in that silence and assumed that no one was remembering her, when actually people just felt worried to remember her.
Yeah.
And I think we've said that quite a few times tonight, haven't we? So it's a really key message. Speak openly and check with the other person. Is it okay to speak openly to you? Can we? Do you welcome this? Because some might say, actually, I would rather you didn't, and that okay needs to be respected.
Yeah. Thank you both for that. Our second performance tonight is from Shades of Grey, their version of Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. It's a sentimental song that warms the heart every season when I listen to it. And I was asked to consider the words of it. Now, when I looked at it, I have to say I hadn't really ever thought about what the words say. It's just a song I enjoy. But it does say, next year all our troubles may be far away. Well, I'm not sure if many watching tonight might feel that next year all their troubles would be far away, but it's a good sentiment. Perhaps you might feel that the line that relates to yourself a little better is there somehow will muddle through. And certainly we've all experienced that kind of feeling of muddling through. Sentimental song is not a bad thing. Allowing yourself to feel and to enter into the emotions, a song can help you to do that. And perhaps at this season, just something that warms the heart and allows you to feel just a little bit sensitive in the best kind of way is not a bad thing. So perhaps as we listen to this song, have yourself a merry little Christmas now.
Have yourselves a merry little Christmas. Let your heart be light. From now on, our troubles will be out of sight. Have yourselves a merry little Christmas. Make the Yuletide gay. From now on, our troubles will be miles away. Here we are as in olden days, happy golden days of you. Faithful friends who are dear to us, gather near to us once more. Through the years we all will be together, if the fates allow. Hang a shining star upon the highest bough, and have yourself a merry little Christmas now. Here we are as in olden days, happy golden days of you. Faithful friends who are dear to us, gather near to us once more. Through the years we all will be together, if the fates allow. Hang a shining star upon the highest bough, and have yourselves a merry little Christmas now.
What an amazing performance by Shades of Grey. One of the performers, Andrea, is not only a talented singer, but also one of our amazing arrangers. I can say that because I'm an amazing arranger too, who helps support our families day in and day out and has come straight from work today to support us tonight. We now get back to answering your important questions.
Another question from one of our listeners is that they lost their dad 21 years ago, a week before Christmas, and they obviously still miss him very much, but they're also upset that he never met his grandson and asking how will they ever move on from this.
So some questions come a little closer to home, don't they, when we're talking about them? And although you could never say, I know how you feel, perhaps I can have a little affinity to this question because I lost my own dad 40 plus years ago. And my own experience is that you don't ever forget that. They're part of you forever. And the moments of memory and even sadness do continue throughout the years. And that's normal. We say that word normal so often in the questions we're asking, but that is normal. That is something that's, how can anybody not be part of you anymore? I understand the thing too about not see your children not knowing the person that you've known and loved. I've found, and I can only speak from my own experience, I've found that my children have got to know my dad through me, and perhaps for our viewer, that's something that they could find too. It's sharing the stories, sharing the memories, sometimes even discovering history you didn't know about as time goes on. You find out things, some other member of the family might share a story or whatever, and together you discover something new about the one that you thought you knew everything about. And that in itself can be building a relationship with that person in a slightly different way, but you're sharing them with the next generation and the next generation. I know in our world today, even if you look at things like when we've celebrated Remembrance Day, the thing has been for people to tell their stories, hasn't it? So that they can then pass it on to the next generation. And if you bring that back into a much more a closer setting within your own family, then sharing the stories. The traditional storytelling is something that's been part of many a culture over the years and generations and centuries. And for us to maybe rekindle that, to tell the stories, to allow our children and our grandchildren to discover the person who we've known and loved. And then you see them in a new way yourself, through your children's eyes, because they're seeing them and they might even respond in a very different way emotionally to the way you had with your parent. And for every parent and child relationship, it's very different, isn't it? So they discover through you and through other members of the family this person who may not physically be present with them, but yet is very much in them. I mean, you only need to watch your children grow up to see that you discover your parent has not left your presence in any way. You see them in the way they speak, in the way they talk, in the way they move sometimes. I only need to watch my eldest son walk down the street and I see his grandfather, you know. Things carry on from generation to generation. You might not see it in the younger child, but as your child grows up, you will see that parent in some way, shape or form, and sharing the memories, but also seeing that they are very much still part of you, part of your children, part of your life. That's, you may have more to share, Charlie, on that.
But just thinking about that idea of, you know, almost questioning, why am I still so upset? And actually it's like evidence of, I love them. I mean, to love is ongoing. Just because they're not present physically, we still love them, don't we? And then all of that love, all of that missing comes about on these occasions, on birthdays or Christmas particularly, when the whole world is talking about, let's gather with our fictional fantasy perfect family. And the reality is many of us are maybe separated by distance or separated because somebody's died or situations are challenging. So there's something around how do we make that special? And you talk about stories, Lynn. I don't know about you, in my childhood, I can recount a story when I left a hospital, when I'd had a plaster taken off my leg, and I can hear the running down the corridor, I can hear the laughter, I can smell it, I can hear the footsteps. I actually don't remember that, I was too young. But I've been told the story so many times. I've got like this sensory experience of a tale that my family, this joke that my family tell. And I'm thinking then, if this man is sharing stories with his son about the grandfather, and maybe it's the grandfather's smell, or maybe it was the sound of his voice, or the colour of clothes he liked to wear, or did you imagine him out digging in the garden, or was he someone who watched sport, or whatever it was he did, you can really conjure up a very sensory experience of them. So the child almost is living with that and carries that. It's incredibly powerful. And we can really bring those people to life. What did they laugh about? What did they like to drink? All of these stories. So I think it can be difficult, because I think we worry if we remember it will hurt a lot. And we're worried about feeling the pain of the loss. But if we don't allow the pain of the loss, we can't get to the beauty of the love. So hopefully they can both sit together. Yes, it hurts they're not here, but how lucky I was to know them, to love them. And of course, not all relationships are straightforward, so they can be complex, and love can be complicated. But actually, we have to allow it in, to feel it, to also get to the appreciation and pleasure of it. And then again, the grandson can experience it in that way and feel free to come and be, what about granddad? Let's do this for granddad. And then it becomes part of that celebration. And then they very are much with you in that occasion. Yeah.
I think what springs to mind is, and this may be totally off-piste as it were, but a picture that when somebody is held just in the past, it can seem like children will think that for us in an older generation, everything was in black and white, there was no colour in our lives. We lived in black and white. That's what it can seem to a young generation from an older generation. And in fact, what we're doing in sharing memories and bringing that person into the present in some way is actually turning the black and white into colour. We're actually not leaving them in that sad memory, but making something living and vibrant and colourful that is part of our everyday now.
And I'm wondering, maybe for this particular person, we're concerned, what if my grandson sees me upset? And I would say, I think that's probably a really healthy thing for him to see. Obviously not uncontrollably upset for huge periods of time, but I remember watching my father cry for the first time at a funeral, and it really was powerful to see this man I saw in very strong there for me in his moment of vulnerability. And we talked about it afterwards, and it stayed with me, and it gives permission. It's okay to express yourself. It's okay to feel and show it. And I think that's a great lesson we can be passing on to our younger generation.
Yeah. So thank you for that. Our next question deals with the fact that grief can sometimes be quite unexpected. Are there specific ways, tools that we have that can help deal with grief?
I think it's important to remember that grief is totally normal, and no matter where you are, you can be overcome by grief. And I think it's about bringing yourself back into the moment. So some of the ways that I like to bring myself back is the 5 senses: touch, taste, being able to see something and smell something and hear something. So grounding yourself and remembering, I can feel that I'm safe, and being able to, I can hear a radio on, there's a song that I know, and being able to tune yourself into that to bring yourself back to when you're maybe feeling anxious or upset, or just remembering that you are safe and in a safe environment.
Yeah, I think some people don't go and do things because they're scared they're going to feel emotional. They could be caught out by these feelings of grief, these strong emotions. I think you're right, George. If you've got something in your toolkit, if I know I've got something I can draw upon, a practical tool that takes me from a strong emotion, whether that's grief, or it could be any emotion we have. But I know that if I use that tool, I do trust I can bring myself back to a calmer way of feeling. I'm going to be more likely to feel confident to go out to things. And it might be also that I give myself permission that if I'm in something and I start to feel those feelings come up, I'm just going to pop to the toilet for a minute and I just can take myself out. And I love that thing that you do, the 5, is it 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? Yeah. So 5 things I can see, 5 things 4 I can hear, 3 I can touch, smell, taste. Just bringing you into the moment will calm your feelings. Because when our feelings are calmer, we'll feel more able to be wherever we are. And I think sometimes, and it's very natural to be, I don't want to have all these strong emotions in front of all of these people in this situation. So therefore I won't go. So one thing I'd really like people to do is just to really tune into their breath. And sometimes people think, well, look, my feelings are this big. How can breath possibly work? And it really is like a superpower. If you can tune into your breath, and the really important thing is to breathe out for longer. So we just breathe in and then breathe out for longer, and breathe in and breathe out for longer. And even just doing that for a minute takes emotions that have started to climb way up, including grief, and it can bring it back down again to a much more manageable sensation. Like I say, you might take yourself off to do that somewhere quiet, but actually you can do that and people won't know. You can do it wherever you're sat. And that, for me, definitely gives confidence. It makes me feel much more resilient and resourceful. And I've had a lot of clients that have said that. They feel, I'm going to practice that, trust I can draw on it, and then I've got it there in my toolkit should I need it. That's almost like in the moment.
Yeah.
But there's that bigger picture, isn't there? So when I'm going through the grieving process, what can I do to help myself through this really difficult time? And of course, we want to provide lots of signposting to people wherever they live, in whichever of the counties that they can go. And we're going to be sending out some information afterwards so people can look up helplines, support groups, websites, to be able to reach out. Georgia said earlier about reaching out to people who might have been through something similar to you. I think, because we've got, how do we feel calmer in the present, but how do we and where do we get to talk about these feelings in a safe place, in a safe way? I think that's really important. And then I'd say the third part would be, how do I start to create a life that just gives me much more support and, dare I say it, pleasure? You know, when we're actually allowed to laugh again, when we're actually allowed to enjoy ourselves again, and that isn't disrespectful to the person that's died. I'm sure they wouldn't want us to be feeling that way. So how do we feel better in the moment? How do we reach out for support and talk to people? And how do we just create a life that starts to get slightly wider than the grief itself?
So do you think that we could have a different approach to death in both as individuals and in our society? I don't know about you, Georgia, but I find that a lot of people who come to me as a ranger, they don't even want to walk through the door because it's a scary place to be. And perhaps that could be because of the fears that we in society have built up. In years gone by, somebody passing away was very much part of the family existence. If somebody passed away, they were at home, everything was done from home, hence the term funeral home. So it wasn't perhaps as fearful because it was part of everyday life. We saw it a lot more, we touched it, we felt it a lot more. Now it's kind of clinical, it's removed. So people, it's almost that phrase taboo, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So do you think there are ways that we could sort of diminish that fear, put to rest that taboo, and help people to move forward and see even that there is laughter? I know people walk, I don't know about you, Georgia, people come into my branch and there is a tremendous amount of laughter at times as we share family memories, as we figure out what somebody would have liked, and sometimes there's something funny, and certainly it's not a place where we ever feel guilty about laughing, because there is that humour even in the midst of dark times, and we allow ourselves that. And I've been uplifted by families I've had the privilege of dealing with. So I don't know, I ask you both, are there ways that we could perhaps diminish the fear and make this more of a normal part of life and the expression of how we interact at this time?
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with you. I've had families come here to the branch and they almost say, oh, I shouldn't laugh. And you say, well, it's okay to laugh because it is normal, and you're sharing your memories of your loved ones, and you see them sort of relax and think, oh, it is okay. Like, this is okay to laugh, and it is okay to be happy. Not that they've passed, but happy because you're remembering that person for everything fun and everything that they loved, and watching their memories live on in the living person's memory as well. So, yeah, I do agree that people, it's almost they feel guilty, like you say, and it's helping people realise that it is okay to be happy and to laugh and to carry on.
I think we spend quite a lot of time, don't we, thinking about how do I live my life well? And there are less conversations about how do I die well. And I certainly know people shut conversations down. I know parents that try to talk to their children don't want to even face the fact that one day they will lose their parent. Who knows what order we go in, but there's that kind of tradition of, the parent might go first, then the child. And people just don't want to have those conversations. We're so scared to have them. And yeah, I think there's huge value in being able to talk about, what would be a good death. How would you want to be remembered in the service? How would you like to be remembered afterwards? Having these very open conversations, because I think it's a bit like we think if we don't talk about it, it won't hurt us. Or if we don't talk about it, it won't happen. And the reality is it will come about, and we don't really know what to do because we've never spoken about it openly. And you think about how many people have pets for the reason that they want their children to experience death in some way and be able to talk about grief and have that conversation. Of course, that's not the only reason we have animals, but that is part of one of having a living thing with a shorter life that we love, is that we can go through that and begin to talk that through and go through that process with the child. I would really value a community that really spoke openly. I think some cultures do. I think in some traditions, people are much more open about grieving and death, and they're not as scared. And they're not as scared to remember and speak openly about the people who have died. And I really value that. I think there's a lot of comfort in that permission to do so. But it also needs to start with our little ones. What do we do at school? How do we speak about it in the classrooms? And we're so busy talking about living, and part of living is dying, and just needs to be normalised.
Thank you both for that. We now move to another musical performance of the night. Here is the Chorus Iceni with Winter Wonderland.
Sleigh bells ring, I'm listening in the lane, snow is glistening, a beautiful sight, we're happy tonight, walking in a winter wonderland, gone away is the bluebird, here to stay is a new bird, he sings a love song as we wonderland. In the meadow we can build a snowman, then pretend that he is Parson Brown. He'll say, are you married? We'll say, no, man, but you can do the job when you're in town. Later on we'll conspire as we dream by the fire to face unafraid the plans that we made, walking in a winter wonderland. Walking, we're in a winter wonderland.
Thank you once more to Chorus Iceni. We are now going to move to the moment of reflection portion of the evening. Each of the candle dedications you will see represents a person who is important to a member of our audience. Let's take a moment to pause as the Chorus Iceni sing a carol medley of It Came Upon a Midnight Clear and Silent Night. During this performance, we will display the names of your loved ones. If you did not get a chance to include your name dedication before the event, you can use the live chat to let us know who you are remembering tonight.
It came upon a
Thank you all. It's been very moving to see how many dedications we received, so many people whom we continue to honour and remember. We hope being together virtually has brought some comfort and our guidance has been helpful. We're now at the end of this evening's event. I want to offer an enormous thank you to all for joining us this evening. I hope it has brought some comfort that remembering your loved one is entirely personal to you, no matter how you choose to do it. Thank you also to all those who have performed tonight, my colleagues Georgia and Charlie Green from Suffolk Mind. You will shortly receive an email asking for your feedback on this service, along with some guidance should you feel you need additional support with bereavement. Please do let us know what you think, as your feedback will help shape future events. As a final thank you for attending, we have created some tree tags where you can write a message to your loved one to either put on a Christmas tree in one of our branches or your own tree at home. Thank you again for sharing your time with us this evening. It's been a pleasure to be with you all, and may I wish you all a very blessed and peaceful Christmas. To play us out, we have Shades of Grey playing the Christmas song.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire, Jack Frost nipping at your nose, Yuletide carols being sung by a choir, and folk dressed up like Eskimos. Everybody knows a turkey and some mistletoe help to make the season night. Tiny tots with their eyes all aglow will find it hard to sleep tonight. They know that Santa's on his way. He's loaded lots of toys and goodies on his sleigh, and every mother's child is gonna spy to see if reindeer really know how to fly. And so I'm offering this simple phrase to kids from 1 to 92. Although it's been said many times, many ways, Merry Christmas to you. They know that Santa's on his way. He's loaded lots of toys and goodies on his sleigh, and every mother's child is gonna spy to see if reindeer really know how to fly. And so I'm offering this simple phrase to kids from 1 to 92. Although it's been said many times, many ways, Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas.